The garage smelled like motor oil and betrayal. I wiped my hands on an old rag, staring at the text message that had just shattered my world into 1,000 pieces. The fluorescent light above flickered, casting shadows that danced across the concrete floor like ghosts of better times. I want an open marriage. This isn't negotiable. We'll talk when I get back from LA. Mauled Beth, my wife of 18 years, mother of my 2 daughters. The woman who used to laugh at my stupid jokes and steal fries from my plate at Murphy's Diner every Friday night. I typed back one word: understood. My name is James Mitchell, and I run Mitchell Electric, the company my father built from nothing in this faded Midwest town of Millbrook. Population 8,847, according to the sign that's been riddled with buckshot for the past decade. I'm 42 years old, and until 3 minutes ago, I thought I knew my life. The house felt different as I walked through it. Empty, cold. The family photos on the mantel seemed to mock me. Beth's perfect smile, the girls in their basketball uniforms, me with my arm around everyone like some clueless fool. The silence pressed against my ears like water. Beth had been different lately, distant. She'd taken that corporate job at Henderson Industries 6 months ago, trading her teacher's salary for something that required business suits and overnight trips. I need to grow, James, she'd said. I need to be more than just a small-town wife. My phone buzzed again. This time it was a photo. Beth at some fancy restaurant, wine glass raised, laughing. She wasn't alone. The man across from her had his back to the camera, but I recognized the leather jacket, the way he held his shoulders, the silver watch I'd given him for his birthday 2 years ago. John, my younger brother, the golden boy who'd never quite found his gold. My hands started shaking. But not from anger, not yet. This was something colder, more calculating. I walked to my toolbox and pulled out a small notebook, the one where I kept track of jobs, payments, and now, apparently, the systematic dismantling of my marriage. I wrote, Day 1, the rules have changed. The next morning came too soon, and not soon enough. I'd spent the night in the garage, making lists. Beth's name was on the house deed, but I'd paid the mortgage for 15 years. She had access to our joint accounts, but I controlled the business finances. The girls were at their grandmother's for the weekend. My mother, not hers. Small mercies. I drove through downtown Millbrook as the sun painted the empty streets gold. Murphy's Diner, where Beth and I had our first date. The old movie theater that showed films 6 months after everyone else. The high school where we'd met, where our daughters now played basketball for the same team Beth had captained 25 years ago. Everything looked the same. But the world had shifted underneath it all. My first stop was the bank. Margaret Holbrook had been handling the Mitchell family accounts since before I was born. She looked up from her computer with the kind of smile that meant she already knew why I was there. Morning, James. Heard Beth's doing real well at Henderson Industries. In a town like Millbrook, gossip traveled faster than bad weather. I wondered what else Margaret had heard. She's finding herself, I said, settling into the chair across from her desk. I need to make some changes to our accounts. Margaret's smile faltered. What kind of changes? The kind that protect my business and my family. 20 minutes later, I walked out with new account numbers, new passwords, and a very clear understanding of my financial position. Beth could keep the credit cards, for now. But the well she'd been drawing from had just run dry. My second stop was Mitchell Electric. The office sat in a converted house on Elm Street, complete with a front porch where my father used to drink coffee and plan his day. Now it was mine, along with the headaches, the payroll, and the constant worry about keeping 23 employees fed. Morning, boss. Danny Reeves looked up from the dispatch board. He'd been with the company for 12 years, ever since he'd gotten out of the Army. Got 3 service calls already, and it's not even 8 o'clock. Good. Keeps the lights on. I poured coffee from the pot that had been brewing since dawn. Danny, I need you to do something for me. Sure thing. Change all the security codes, office, warehouse, everything, and get me a list of everyone who has keys. Danny's eyebrows went up, but he didn't ask questions. That's why I liked him. You got it. Anything else? Yeah, if my brother John shows up asking about anything, work, schedules, whatever. You don't know nothing about nothing. Now Danny looked concerned. Everything okay, James? I took a long sip of coffee, feeling it burn all the way down. Everything's about to be. The rest of the week passed in a blur of routine and rage. Beth called twice, both conversations strained and formal. She was extending her trip to explore new opportunities. I told her to take all the time she needed. The girls came home Sunday evening, full of stories about their grandmother's cooking and the old movies they'd watched. Becca, my 17-year-old, had her mother's sharp eyes and her grandmother's sharper tongue. Brianna, 15, was quieter but noticed everything. "Where's Mom?" Becca asked, dumping her duffel bag in the hallway. "Work trip. She'll be back soon." Becca studied my face like she was reading a book. "You look tired, Dad." "Long week. Go get settled. We'll order pizza." That night, after the girls had gone to bed, I did something I'd never done before. I went through Beth's things, her desk in the home office, her dresser, the shoebox in the back of her closet that I'd always respected as private space. I found the receipts first. Dinner at Romano's, the nicest restaurant in 3 counties. 2 entrees, wine, dessert. The date was 3 weeks ago, when Beth had supposedly been at a teacher training conference. Then I found the phone. It was tucked inside an old purse, a cheap flip phone that looked like something from 10 years ago. The kind of phone you bought with cash and used when you didn't want anyone tracking your conversations. The message history made my stomach turn. "Can't wait to see you tonight. Jay's working late again. Beth. Meet me at the usual place. Room 237. Unknown number." "This is so wrong but feels so right. Beth. He doesn't deserve you. Never has." I scrolled back through weeks of messages, months. The unknown number had a name in Beth's contacts. My heart. I called it. "Beth, thank God I was worried when..." I hung up before John could finish the sentence. "My brother. My own brother." I sat in Beth's chair, surrounded by the evidence of her betrayal, and felt something shift inside me. The hurt was still there, sharp and constant, but underneath it, something else was growing. Something patient and methodical. I opened Beth's laptop. She'd always been careless with passwords, used the same one for everything. Our anniversary date, backwards. Her email told the rest of the story. Messages between her and John going back 8 months. Plans to meet, complaints about me, about our marriage, about how she felt trapped in this dead-end town, with a dead-end husband. There were photos, nothing explicit, but intimate enough. John's apartment. Beth wearing a dress I'd never seen. The 2 of them at restaurants I couldn't afford. But the real surprise was in her sent folder. Emails to a divorce attorney in the state capital. Inquiries about asset division, custody arrangements, spousal support. Beth wasn't just having an affair. She was planning her exit strategy. I printed everything. Every email, every message, every receipt. Then I put it all in a manila envelope and locked it in my office safe, right next to the business insurance papers and my father's will. The next morning, I called in sick for the first time in 3 years. Instead of going to work, I drove to Ray's gym, on the outskirts of town. Ray Kowalski had been my boxing coach in high school, back when I'd thought I might be tough enough to make something of myself with my fists instead of my brain. The gym hadn't changed much. Same heavy bags hanging from the ceiling. Same speed bags that sounded like machine gun fire when the serious fighters got going. Same smell of sweat and determination. Ray looked up from wrapping some kid's hands. He was in his 60s now, gray-haired but still solid as a tree stump. "Well, I'll be damned, James Mitchell. Haven't seen you in here for what, 5 years? Something like that." I looked around at the familiar space. "You got time to talk?" Ray finished with the kid and sent him off to work the heavy bag. Then he led me to his office, a cramped space filled with fight posters and trophies from better days. "You look like hell, son. What's eating at you?" I told him. "Not everything, but enough." Ray listened without interrupting, his weathered face giving nothing away. "So what are you going to do about it?" he asked when I finished. "I don't know yet." Ray leaned back in his chair, studying me. "You remember what I used to tell you about fighting? Hit hard, hit first, hit last. That's part of it. But the real secret is patience. You wait for your opening. You let your opponent make mistakes, and when the time is right, you end it." I nodded, understanding more than just boxing strategy. "You want some advice, James? That's why I'm here. Don't do anything stupid. Don't do anything illegal. But don't be a victim either. You got rights, you got dignity, and you got a brain that's sharper than most people give you credit for." I stood up, feeling better than I had in days. "Thanks, Ray. Anytime. And James, if you need to work off some steam, you know where to find me." 3 days later, Beth came home. I was in the kitchen making coffee when I heard her key in the front door. The girls were at school, which was probably for the best. Beth walked in like nothing had changed. rolling her suitcase behind her and checking her phone. "Morning," she said, not looking at me. "Coffee smells good. Help yourself." I kept my voice level. "How was LA? Productive. We landed the Morrison account. Big commission." She poured coffee into her favorite mug, the one the girls had made her for Mother's Day 3 years ago. The irony wasn't lost on me. "That's great, really great." I leaned against the counter, studying her. "You look different." "Different how?" "Happy, relaxed, like you've made some important decisions." Beth's hand paused halfway to her mouth. "What's that supposed to mean?" "Nothing, just an observation." She set down the mug and turned to face me fully. "James, we need to talk." I figured, when? "Tonight, after the girls go to bed." "Sounds good. I'll be here." Beth looked surprised, like she'd expected more of a fight. "Okay, good. I'll be in the office if you need me." "Actually, there's a problem with the office." "What kind of problem?" "Computer's acting up. Might be a virus. I had Danny take it to the shop." It wasn't true, but Beth didn't need to know that. I'd hidden her laptop in my workshop, along with everything else I'd found. "Fine. I'll use my phone." She started to leave, then turned back. "James?" "Yeah? This doesn't have to be ugly." I smiled, and something in my expression made her take a step backward. "No," I said. "It doesn't." That afternoon, I made some calls. First to my lawyer, Tom Bradley, who'd handled my father's estate and the business incorporation, then to my accountant, then to my insurance agent. By the time the girls got home from school, I had a much clearer picture of where I stood. The house was in both our names, but I'd made every mortgage payment for 15 years. The business was mine alone. My father had been very specific about that in his will. Our joint savings account had about $12,000 in it, but the business accounts were separate and substantial. Beth could take half of everything we'd built together, but she'd have to fight for it, and fights cost money she didn't have. Dinner was awkward. Beth tried to act normal, asking the girls about school and their basketball season. Becca answered in monosyllables, her sharp eyes moving between her parents like she was watching a tennis match. Brianna just pushed food around her plate. "Can I go to Ashley's tonight?" Becca asked. "We have a history project." "School night," I said automatically. "Dad, it's important." I looked at Beth, who nodded. "Okay, but home by 10. Thanks." Becca was out the door before I could change my mind. Brianna disappeared to her room, claiming homework, which left Beth and me alone in the kitchen, the dishwasher humming between us like white noise. "So," Beth said, refilling her wine glass, "how do we do this? You tell me. It's your show." She took a long sip, gathering courage. "I'm not happy, James. I haven't been happy for a long time." "Since when?" "I don't know. Years, maybe. I feel like I'm suffocating here. This town, this house, this life. It's not enough anymore." "And John makes it enough?" The wine glass froze halfway to her lips. "What?" "My brother, John. Your heart." Room 237, at the roadside inn. Romano's restaurant. Should I go on? Beth's face went white, then red. "You went through my things." "I went through our things, in our house, that I pay for." "You had no right." "I had every right. I'm your husband. Or was, until you decided to audition for a replacement." Beth set down the wine glass with shaking hands. "It's not what you think. It's exactly what I think. The question is, what do we do about it?" She was quiet for a long time, staring at the table. When she finally looked up, her eyes were hard. "I want a divorce." I figured. "What else do you want?" "Half of everything. The house, the savings, part of the business." I laughed, a sound with no humor in it. "The business? The one you've never shown any interest in? The one you've complained about for 18 years? I supported you. I raised your children while you built that company." "Our children. And you're right, you did support me." Past tense. Beth stood up, her chair scraping against the floor. "Don't make this harder than it has to be." "Harder? Beth, you've been planning this for months, meeting with lawyers, setting up secret accounts, screwing my brother in cheap motel rooms. How exactly could I make it harder? I never meant for you to find out like this." "How did you mean for me to find out? Were you going to send me a postcard from wherever you and John decided to set up house?" "John has nothing to do with this." "John has everything to do with this. He's been sniffing around you since your high school reunion 2 years ago. I saw how he looked at you. I just didn't think my own brother would be stupid enough to what? To see that I'm worth more than this?" The words hung in the air like a challenge. I stood up slowly, my hands flat on the table. Get out. What? Get out of my house, tonight. Go stay with John, or your sister, or whoever. But don't sleep under my roof. You can't throw me out. This is my house too. Watch me. I pulled out my phone and showed her the screen. I've already changed the locks, the garage code, the security system. Your keys won't work anymore. Beth's mouth opened and closed like a fish. That's illegal. No, it's not. Check with your lawyer. I have every right to secure my property when I have reasonable suspicion of adultery. You bastard. Maybe. But I'm a bastard with a good lawyer and 18 years of mortgage payments. You want the house? You can fight me for it. But it's going to cost you more than you can afford. Beth grabbed her purse and headed for the door. She turned back once, her face twisted with rage. This isn't over. No, I agreed. It's not. The next 2 weeks were a masterclass in small-town warfare. Beth moved in with her sister across town, but she might as well have taken out a billboard advertisement. Everyone knew. The mailman, the grocery store clerks, the parents at the girls' basketball games. They all knew that Beth Mitchell had left her husband for his own brother. The looks I got ranged from pity to curiosity to barely concealed amusement. I was the cuckold, the fool who'd been played by his own family. In a town like Millbrook, that kind of humiliation had a half-life longer than plutonium, but I wasn't just sitting around feeling sorry for myself. First, I hired a private investigator. Sally Chen had moved to Millbrook 5 years ago after retiring from the state police. She ran a one-woman operation out of an office above the hardware store, handling insurance fraud and cheating spouses with equal efficiency. I need documentation, I told her, sliding a retainer check across her desk. Photos, financial records, timeline of the affair, everything that will hold up in court. Sally looked over the information I'd already gathered. The phone records, the emails, the receipts. You've done good work. Most of this is admissible. I can fill in the gaps. How long? 2 weeks, maybe 3. Your brother's not exactly careful. Neither is your wife. Ex-wife. Not yet, she's not. But I understand the sentiment. Second, I started making strategic moves with the business. John had been doing odd jobs for Mitchell Electric for the past year. Nothing permanent, just filling in when we were short-handed. He had keys to the warehouse and knew our client list. I changed everything. New locks, new alarm codes, new procedures. I also started documenting every tool that had gone missing, every supply order that didn't quite add up. John had been skimming, nothing major, but enough to matter in a divorce proceeding. Third, I started talking to people. Not gossiping. I left that to the church ladies and the coffee shop regulars. But I made sure the right people knew the right facts. My lawyer, my accountant, my insurance agent, the bank president, who'd known my family for 30 years, the mayor, who relied on Mitchell Electric for the city's maintenance contracts. I wasn't spreading rumors. I was building a foundation. The girls were handling things better than I'd expected. Becca had figured out the situation on her own and was furious with her mother. Brianna was quieter, more confused, but she stayed close to home and didn't ask questions I couldn't answer. Dad? Becca found me in the garage one evening, working on the truck that didn't really need work. Can I ask you something? Shoot, are you okay? I mean, really okay? I set down my wrench and looked at my daughter. She had Beth's eyes but my stubborn chin. I'm angry, I'm hurt, I'm embarrassed, but I'm okay. Good, because Mom's being stupid. Don't talk about your mother that way. Why not? It's true. She's throwing away our family for Uncle John. Uncle John, Dad. He's a loser. I couldn't argue with that assessment. John had been drifting since high school, never quite finding his place. He'd been married twice, both times briefly. He'd started a dozen businesses and finished none of them. He was charming and handsome and completely unreliable. Your mother's going through something, I said. People make mistakes when they're confused. This isn't a mistake. This is a choice. Becca was right, but I wasn't going to say so. What matters is that you and Brianna are okay. Everything else we'll figure out. What if she tries to take us with her? The question I'd been dreading. She won't. She can't. This is your home, your school, your friends. No judge is going to uproot you kids for no good reason. Promise? Promise. But that night, lying alone in the bed I'd shared with Beth for 18 years, I wondered if I was being naive. Beth had always been determined when she set her mind to something. And she had resources now. Her new job, her lawyer, whatever promises John had made her. I needed to be smarter, more strategic. The opportunity came sooner than expected. I was having lunch at Murphy's Diner when John walked in. He looked around nervously, spotted me in the back booth, and walked over like a man approaching his own execution. "James, can we talk?" "We're talking. I mean really talk. About Beth, about what happened." I gestured to the empty seat across from me. "Sit." John slid into the booth, his hands shaking slightly. He'd lost weight, and his usually perfect hair looked like he'd been running his fingers through it. "I never meant for it to happen," he started. "But it did happen." "Yeah, it did. For how long?" 8 months, maybe 9. Longer than I'd thought." "Whose idea was it?" John looked surprised by the question. What do you mean?" "Simple question. Who made the first move? You or Beth?" "I don't think that matters. It matters to me." John was quiet for a long moment, staring at his coffee cup. "She did, Beth. She called me after that fight you two had about her job. She was crying, said she felt trapped. I went over to comfort her, and one thing led to another." "What fight?" "The one where you told her she was being selfish for wanting more than Millbrook could offer." I remembered the conversation, but it hadn't been a fight. It had been a discussion about priorities and responsibilities. Apparently, Beth had described it differently to John. "So you decided to comfort her." "It wasn't like that. Not at first." "What was it like?" John shifted uncomfortably. "She needed someone to listen, someone who understood her dreams. And you understood them better than you did." The words hit like a slap. I felt my jaw tighten, but kept my voice level. "Tell me about these dreams, John, the ones I was too stupid to understand." "She wanted to travel, see the world, build something bigger than this town. She wanted to abandon her family. She wanted to live." I leaned forward, close enough to see the fear in John's eyes. "And what did you promise her? What kind of life did you sell her on?" "I didn't sell her anything. I just showed her possibilities." "What possibilities?" "You're 40 years old, John. You live in a one-bedroom apartment and drive a car that's older than my daughter's. What exactly were you going to give her that I couldn't?" John's face flushed red. "I gave her respect. I gave her attention. I made her feel beautiful. You gave her lies. I gave her hope." I sat back, studying my brother's face. He actually believed what he was saying. In his mind, he was the hero of this story, rescuing Beth from her boring life with her boring husband. "Here's what's going to happen," I said quietly. "You're going to stay away from my wife. You're going to stay away from my daughters. You're going to stay away from my business. And if I see you anywhere near my family again, we're going to have a very different kind of conversation. You can't threaten me." "I'm not threatening you. I'm explaining consequences." John stood up, trying to look defiant. "Beth loves me. Beth loves the idea of you. There's a difference." "You're wrong. We'll see." After John left, I sat in the booth for another hour, thinking. He was weaker than I'd expected, more delusional. That was useful information. But Beth was the real threat. Beth was smart, determined, and angry. She wouldn't be as easy to handle as her lovesick accomplice. It was time to get serious. The plan came together over the following week, like pieces of a puzzle I'd been working on, without realizing it. Sally Chen delivered her report on a Thursday morning. A manila envelope thick with photographs, financial records, and timeline documentation that painted a picture of systematic deception going back almost a year. "Your brother's been busy," Sally said, settling into the chair across from my desk. 3 different motels, 2 restaurants, and what looks like a weekend trip to Chicago last month. Mom, intrigue. I flipped through the photographs. John and Beth holding hands outside Romano's. John and Beth entering the roadside inn. John and Beth at a hotel in Chicago, looking like tourists without a care in the world. What about the financial stuff? That's where it gets interesting. Your wife's been moving money into a separate account for 6 months. Small amounts. Nothing that would trigger attention, but it adds up to about $8,000. My money. Technically, yes. Money from joint accounts that she had legal access to. But the pattern suggests planning, which supports your claim of premeditation. I set down the photos and looked at Sally. What else? Your brother's been telling people he's going to start his own electrical business. Says he's learned everything he needs to know from working with you. That was news to me. He's been working odd jobs. Nothing that would teach him how to run a business. Maybe not. But he's been making promises to your wife about their future together. Big promises. I thought about John's apartment, his ancient car, his history of failed ventures. He can't deliver on those promises. Probably not, but she doesn't know that yet. Sally left me with the report and a bill for services rendered. I locked everything in my safe and spent the rest of the day thinking about timing. The opportunity came that weekend. Millbrook's annual Founders Day Festival was the biggest event of the year, drawing people from 3 counties for food, music, and the kind of small-town celebration that looked good in tourist brochures. Mitchell Electric always sponsored a booth, partly for business and partly because it was expected. I was manning the booth Saturday afternoon when I saw them. Beth and John, walking through the crowd like they belonged together. Beth wore a sundress I'd never seen, and John had his arm around her waist with the casual possessiveness of a man marking his territory. The crowd noticed them too. Conversations stopped mid-sentence. Heads turned. Whispers spread through the festival like ripples in a pond. I waited until they were close to my booth, then stepped out to intercept them. Beth, John, enjoying the festival? Beth lifted her chin defiantly. Hello, James. John tried to steer her away, but I moved to block their path. Actually, I'm glad I ran into you both. Saves me a phone call. What do you want? Beth asked. Just wanted to let you know about the changes at the company. John, since you've been telling people you're starting your own business, I figured you wouldn't need those odd jobs anymore. John's face went pale. What are you talking about? Your employment, such as it was. Consider this your termination notice. You can't fire me. I'm family. I can fire anyone I want. It's my company. A crowd was gathering, drawn by the tension and the promise of drama. I recognized faces from church, from the school board, from the city council. The kind of people who would remember this conversation and repeat it for years. James, don't do this here, Beth said quietly. Do what? Run my business? Protect my employees from theft? John stepped forward, his hands clenched into fists. I never stole anything from you. I pulled out my phone and showed him the screen. 18 power drills over 6 months. 27 boxes of wire nuts. 6 rolls of electrical tape. Should I go on? Those were supplies for jobs. Jobs that were never billed. Jobs that don't appear in our records. Jobs that look a lot like personal projects. The crowd was growing larger, and I could see people recording with their phones. Perfect. You're trying to humiliate us, Beth said. I'm trying to protect my business and my reputation, both of which have been damaged by people I trusted. We haven't damaged anything, John protested. Really? Then explain this. I pulled out one of Sally's photographs. John and Beth entering the roadside inn. Clearly identifiable, clearly intimate. Beth grabbed for the photo, but I held it out of reach. Where did you get that? Does it matter? The question is, what are you going to do about it? About what? About the fact that everyone in 3 counties now knows that Beth Mitchell left her husband for his own brother. About the fact that John Mitchell has been stealing from the family business to finance his affair. About the fact that both of you have made yourselves the subject of gossip that will follow you for the rest of your lives. The crowd was silent now, hanging on every word. I could see phones recording, social media posts being written in real time. By evening, this conversation would be all over town. By tomorrow, it would be regional news. Beth's eyes filled with tears, but they were tears of rage, not shame. You planned this. I planned to have a conversation. You chose to have it in public. You manipulative, careful. There are children present. John grabbed Beth's arm. Come on, let's go. But I wasn't finished. One more thing, John. About that business you're planning to start? What about it? You might want to check the non-compete clause in your employment agreement, and the confidentiality provisions, and the part about using proprietary information to compete with Mitchell Electric. John's mouth opened and closed without sound. You never had me sign anything, he finally managed. Didn't I? Check with your lawyer. Oh wait, you can't afford a lawyer. I turned to Beth. Speaking of lawyers, how's the divorce proceeding? Getting expensive? We'll manage. Will you? Because I've been thinking about our assets, the house, the savings, the business. Turns out, adultery affects property division in this state, especially when there's evidence of planning and deception. Beth's face went white. You can't prove adultery. I held up Sally's envelope. Actually, I can. Photos, financial records, timeline documentation going back almost a year. Your lawyer's going to love it. The crowd was starting to murmur. sensing that the show was reaching its climax. I could see my daughters near the edge of the group, Becca recording with her phone, Brianna looking mortified. "Here's what's going to happen," I said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "Beth, you can have your divorce, but you're not getting half of anything. You're not getting the house. You're not getting custody of the girls. And you're not getting spousal support. The court will decide that," Beth said. "The court will see the evidence, all of it, including the money you've been hiding, the lies you've been telling, and the systematic way you've been planning to destroy our family." I turned to John. "And you're going to find out what it costs to compete with a business that has 18 years of client relationships, municipal contracts, and a reputation for honesty." "You can't ruin us," John said, but his voice lacked conviction. "I don't need to ruin you. You've done that yourselves. I'm just making sure everyone knows about it." I looked around at the crowd, at the faces of people I'd known my entire life. "Ladies and gentlemen, I give you the new power couple of Millbrook, John and Beth Mitchell. May they get exactly what they deserve." The crowd began to disperse, buzzing with excitement and scandal. Beth and John stood frozen in the middle of it all, suddenly understanding the magnitude of what had just happened. I walked back to my booth, where Becca was waiting with a grin that could have lit up the county. "Dad," she said, "that was awesome." "Was it?" "Totally." Mom and Uncle John looked like they wanted to crawl under a rock. I looked back at Beth and John, who were arguing in heated whispers, while people stared and whispered around them. "Yeah," I said, "I think they did." The festival continued around us, but the real entertainment was over. I'd fired my shot, and it had hit exactly where I'd aimed. Now all I had to do was wait for the consequences to play out. In a town like Millbrook, consequences had a way of compounding with interest. The reckoning was just beginning. November 14th, 2025, 0 hours, 24 minutes, and 13 seconds.